So it's Mars and Venus today in this video. So it's all about relationships, which is a big one because that's the one that usually comes up pretty often or all the time in my readings. Is that's how we know each other, is through relationships, and that's where projections take place, and we experience a lot of different dynamics that help to get us to refine our self-expression or understand emotional needs or figure out the best way to orient ourselves in terms of boundaries. You name it. There's just so many dynamics that go on within a relationship. So I'm going to talk about Mars and Venus, which are the main placements, and I'm going to kind of build on top of that. So you can just look at it. Just looking at your Mars and Venus placements, what signs are they in, is foundational. That'll give you a lot of good information. Then you can look at the houses they're in. Then you can look at the aspects that they're making to other planets. And so there's many layers to this. And so I will cover the layering. I'm not going to get into what each symbol in each sign means, but I am going to link in the description box below a link to articles on my website. I have one that covers Mars through all of the signs, and they're just little blurbs in terms of, let's say you have a Mars in Virgo, there'll be 2 or 3 paragraphs about what does that mean? What does that energy symbolize? What are you working through? Same thing with Venus. If you have Venus in Pisces, I'll have a write-up of 2 or 3 paragraphs. This is what the energy of Venus in Pisces means. So let me share my screen and I will start talking through the symbols of these charts. I will start talking through these symbols in your natal chart. So we start with the symbolism of Mars. And so Mars is instinctive. Think of getting information and acting, and that getting of information and acting, there's no thought involved in it. It's instinctual. And that would be the underlying or the representation of Mars energy. From an evolutionary astrology perspective, you can look at Mars in relation to your Pluto placement. From a soul perspective, you are going to need to take action and have the freedom to take action to be able to feel empowered in the location, the sign, the aspects of your Pluto placement and the polarity point. It's also representative of how sexual energy is expressed. So again, instinctual from a human being standpoint is I need to create, I need to procreate, I need to exchange sexual energy with other beings. So it's a symbol for that energy and how it gets expressed. You can also look at it in terms of if you start at Pluto in your natal chart, you locate Pluto and then you go counterclockwise around the wheel to locate Mars and find out what distance there is between Pluto and Mars. There's another video I'm probably going to do to discuss that a little farther, but it's attributed to the 8 phases or the 8 cycles of the moon. And there's a certain energy that carries, but just look at it from how far is Mars away from Pluto. And that could give you an indication of, from a soul perspective, how long have you been trying to, or how long have you been experiencing trying to become empowered in the area where your Pluto placement is in your chart. So if it's full phase, Jeffrey Wolf Green taught in his class that there's 8 primary phases here on Earth to work through or become empowered in the area where your Pluto placement is. So if you are in a full phase between Mars and Pluto, maybe you've had about 4 primary lifetimes here working on that Pluto placement. So it's not completely new to you from a soul perspective. You've had some experience there from other lifetimes. So you can look at it from that perspective too. Like I said in the beginning, you can simply look at where is Mars, what sign is it in. That will give you good information in terms of your outward expressed energy in this lifetime. Then you can look at the house that it's in, any aspects it's making to other planets. The other layering that gets placed on top of this is your first house, because your first house is related to Mars. It's Aries energy, it's instinctual. And if you look at it from the perspective of the first house is you separating from source to have your own unique experience, that adds to your Mars placement. Look at your first house. What signs on the cusp of your first house? So your ascendant sign. What planets are in the first house? That'll add more context to your Mars placement. Then where is Aries located by house? If you're a natural zodiac, Aries would be in the first house, and so you would stop there. But most people don't have a natural zodiac. Your Aries can be on the cusp of your fifth house, or your eighth house, or your 11th house. So that would be the next layer to this equation is where is Aries? What house is it on the cusp of? What planets are in that house? That would again add some more layering to your Mars placement. So you can get as complicated or as simple with this as you want in your own chart. You will get information and you will continue to unpack more information as you go through the layers. So Venus is your inner vibration. I just want to go back to Mars here and make sure. Yeah, okay, we're good there. So Venus is your inner vibration. And what I mean by that is think of it again as instinctual, and it's the energy that's vibrating within you that will naturally get responded to by others. They will be attracted to that, or you will be attracted to them, vice versa. So Venus also represents how do you feel about yourself, your self-esteem, how do you relate to yourself? So one of the examples that Jeffrey Wolf Green uses is the example of a Venus in Virgo, which Virgo can be very inward and very analytical, but also very judgmental of themselves. And so he uses the example of a Venus in Virgo individual that could potentially attract people that criticize them. And then they're like, well, why the hell do I keep attracting people that are hard on me or point out the things that I don't do right? That's frustrating. Why is that happening? What's really happening is you're reflecting the mirror effect. You're reflecting how you're inwardly relating to yourself, which is I'm critical of myself. So yeah, I'm vibrating that frequency. I'm going to attract people that's going to show me that I'm critical of myself. So the evolution of that, if you have like a Venus in Virgo, the evolution is always to bring on the energies of the polarity point, which in that example would be Pisces, which would be more leniency to yourself and being able to go with the flow and actually being able to be okay when you make mistakes and understand that we're all here in this life existence to experience this life and do our best in terms of taking actions, engaging in things, getting the feedback and reorienting. So it's all good. It's cool. And then once you start embracing the Pisces polarity, you have more lenience with yourself. That inner vibration of having more lenience with yourself will be reflected in relationships. You'll start bringing people in that are more lenient of you, and it'll be more of a collaborative relationship. So that's how this works. So it's not just your Venus placement and what sign it's in, what's the polarity sign, because that's actually the synthesizing that you're looking for yourself in this lifetime. Venus also relates to the function of listening and hearing somebody, more of the listening part. The listening part meaning, so listening and hearing, you can hear somebody say something to you in a conversation. You can hear them, but then are you listening to their perspective? So are you hearing them and then formulating a response in your head to respond to them? Or are you really listening to them and hearing whatever they're saying from their perspective so that you can be accepting of their perspective? Now, that doesn't mean that you would necessarily agree with that or won't have a different perspective, but you can honor the fact that that person has their own journey, they've had their own experiences, they have their own soul journey, and so they're delivering this information to you from that perspective. The other thing here is sexual needs. And did I cover that with Mars? Sexual energies expressed? I don't know if I did, but certainly Mars and Venus covers or will give you clues on how you are wanting to express your sexual energy. So the difference here between Mars and Venus is Mars is your outwardly expressed energy, and Venus is the energy that you will attract. It is an energy that's vibrating within you as well, but you will attract that energy for your evolution. So that's an important piece to our evolution here on this planet, is being able to authentically express that energy and being able to do it in an authentic way. Eliminating any distortions, eliminating any limiting beliefs around sexual activity or how you express that is a big part of your Mars and your Venus placement. Again, foundationally, what signs are they in will give you some clues there. So I put here the desire to embrace the opposite sign. I already covered that. The other example I give here is maybe a Venus in Cancer individual. Embracing Capricorn energy would be important for them. So Venus in Cancer, their soul would be naturally oriented to emotions and be naturally oriented to maybe the family or being able to express their emotions or maybe projecting emotions that were not met in childhood. And so embracing Capricorn means I'll take responsibility at some point in my life by having maybe projected needs being responded to from other people. I will be able to understand the needs that I'm projecting, be able to process them, be able to heal any emotional needs that were not met in childhood, be able to meet them for myself so that I no longer project emotional needs in relationships. So that's just another example of an archetype and how that would work. So then there's the layering effect, right? You can just look at Venus in the sign, but then Venus in what house is it in? What aspects is Venus making to other planets? What sign is on the cusp of your seventh house? Seventh house is the Libra house. So that's the external representation of Venus. You have Taurus, which is the internal, how you feel about yourself, which gets reflected on the Libra side, seventh house. So what sign do you have on the cusp of your seventh house? Do you have any planets in your seventh house? If so, what planets are they aspecting? Then where is Libra? If you have a natural zodiac, Libra will be on the cusp of your seventh house. You can stop there. If you don't, Libra will be on the cusp of another house. Maybe it's your third house, maybe it's your fifth house, maybe it's your 10th house. What planets are in that house? What house is it? What planets are in that house? What signs are they making to other planets? That'll give you some more information. Keep peeling back layers of the onion. Some other things to consider here is, do you have Mars retrograde in your natal chart? Or do you have Venus retrograde in your natal chart? So Mars retrograde is every 2 years for about 2 months, and Venus is every 18 months for about 2 or 3 weeks. So we are currently at the making of this video here on August 1st, 2023, we are in Venus retrograde in the sign of Leo. So people born during this time will have Venus retrograde in their natal chart. So what does it mean? If you have Mars retrograde, it's more of an inverted energy. So it's more where I talked about Mars symbolizing instinctual, I need to go and do this thing. A Mars retrograde soul will be more, that energy will be more internalized before it gets externalized, or it will be externalized, but then there'll be an internal orientation to, well, what happened there? Or why did I take that energy? Or why did I get that response from that person? Or why did I engage in that activity? It's more of a scorpionic type energy. And so I put here the desire to examine the results of experience. And the other part here is no wasted time, which means Mars retrograde is more pointed towards Pluto, the symbol of Pluto, which would be more towards your soul. So you can think of this as I only want, even though things may come across as being instinctive when you take actions, it's like your soul is vibrating at a frequency that says, I am only wanting to take the actions that are needed for my soul's evolution. There's no waste and there's no restriction. So that can be what you would experience as a Mars retrograde. And again, when I talk about all of this stuff, you have to actually look at the layers in the chart. A lot of this gets colored and it can be experienced differently by aspects. What house is it in? What signs are they in? All of these colorings or all of these layerings add context. But just foundationally, this would be the energy of a Mars retrograde. From a sexual energy standpoint, it could be sporadic. It could be contemplative, meaning I engaged in that activity or activities, or I'm expressing sexual energy in this way. What does it mean? What am I trying to show myself? Why did I feel that way during that experience? What am I trying to show myself? The other way this can be externalized is by a rabbit-like behavior in terms of sexual activity, which is somebody that they are going to engage in a lot of different experimental type experiences, maybe a lot of different relationships, a lot of different sexual activity, maybe polyamory can be part of this, where you're expressing that energy in many different ways and using that energy to drive yourself forward from a soul perspective, to understand things at a deeper level, or just to express that energy, which is kind of like for yourself can be soul renewal. You feel re-energized, renewed. So that can be part of this energy here. And then Venus retrograde, again, is more of the Taurus representation of Venus, which again is more inwardly focused. Who am I? What do I need? And so there's this perpetual interrelated, how do I want to express myself? Or when I engage in activities with people or relationships with people, how is that contributing to who I am? How is that showing me who I am? The other thing here is, again, because it's the Taurus side, I feel within these people, there's a strong inner desire or expression that needs to be brought forward, released in some form or fashion. And it normally it requires solitude, it requires concentration and focus. It requires a self-orientation. So this is a placement that's heavy among artists and musicians, where you can see themselves pouring themselves into their work. And maybe, with artists and musicians, they create these amazing, their output is awe-inspiring and is simply inspiring to other people and life-giving. It's creative, it's beautiful, it's Venus, right? So it doesn't need to be, you don't need to be an artist or a musician. I actually had somebody that I had a discussion with that they had a relative that was an accountant, but he was somebody that poured himself into that field and was very analytical and drove himself into that. And from his perspective, it was creative and it was expressing himself in a way that felt good to him. So it's going to be inwardly related is the best way to describe the basis of this energy. This also can be attracting relationships from past lives. Venus retrograde, let's repeat. And Venus with the sign of it, with Venus being a sign of relationships, potentially replaying past life relationships as part of this. It also can be representative of a counselor or a guide, because somebody who's inwardly focused and they have a really good sense of who they are and they pour themselves into what they do simply is knowledgeable. They know stuff on a very deep level and can maybe help others to be able to get in touch with who they really are. Maybe people come to them that don't have that energy, would be attracted to a Venus in retrograde soul to say, hey, show me. How can I bring out more of myself? Can be a representation of this. The other thing you can look at is the distance between Mars and Venus. You would start at Mars, locate Mars in your chart, and then go counterclockwise to locate Venus. This will give you an indication of what the relationship energy is for you in this lifetime. So I'm not going to cover this here, but I do have an article on my website, which I'm going to make a note for myself to link that in the description box below. It's an article on the phase between Mars and Venus, and there's a tool there, or there's a website where you can go, which will show you what phase that you have between Mars and Venus. And then there's a short write-up on my website that says this is the energy you carry. So using an example, if Mars and Venus are very close to each other, and let's say you start at Mars and Venus is right to the left of Mars, right, counterclockwise, that would be Aries energy, which would mean relationships and relating to other people is new for your soul. So that means you're going to have to experiment. You're going to have many different types of experiences in order to understand how do you relate to other people? What is the right orientation for you in this lifetime? How do you maintain your own independence in relationship to other people? You're going to need to get responses from other people to understand that. So that's just one example. The other thing here is I just did a video on your natal chart and the progressions in your natal chart. And so again, I will link that in the description box below, but that's another tool you can use here to pull up your progress chart. If you're not familiar with that, you can check out the video below. You will always have, so whatever sign Mars is in your chart, whatever sign Venus is in your chart, that will always be the energy that you're working through in this lifetime. Progressions will say, well, how has my psyche changed over time? Because as you get older, your orientation or how you behave or the things that you point your energy towards will naturally change. So the progress chart will show you how the Mars and Venus energy is progressing through your lifetime. So the example I gave here is maybe you have a Mars in Cancer in your natal chart, but now in your progress chart, your Mars has gone into the sign of Virgo. So I put here just a foundational energy of, I'm a Mars in Cancer, but now I need experiences that help me understand or heal any emotional imbalances, or to simply want to understand what past emotionally challenging experiences are showing me about myself. That's important for me at this period of time if my Mars has progressed into Virgo. And so that's another way to look at this too, another layer to the equation. And so you can do this for your Mars, you can do this for your Venus to understand at this point in time, what am I, how am I expressing my energy, and what am I calling towards me for my evolution. So let me pull up an example chart and we'll go through some of this layering here, looking at an actual chart. To the point I made earlier in the document about looking at the distance between Mars and Pluto to see, well, how long has my soul been experiencing this energy? You would start here at Pluto, 28 degrees Capricorn, and go counterclockwise to Mars and Virgo. So that would be disseminating phase. So just looking at it foundationally, Mars is pretty far away from Pluto. So from a soul perspective, you've been working on, or this individual has been working on a fourth house Pluto signature for lifetimes. It's not new to them. It's not like Mars is sitting over here, right? If Mars was over there, then this would be relatively new to them. So you can expect there to be some Aries energy trying to figure things out. And then the other thing is the distance between Mars and Venus. So starting at Mars, because it's the slower moving body, you would start at Mars and go counterclockwise to Venus. And so that is balsamic phase. So balsamic phase is wrapping up. It's Pisces energy. And so there could be, it's almost doubling down on the energy of Venus retrograde, which means repeating relationships with other people, with souls you've had relationships with in other lifetimes. This is another representation of this, with Venus being in balsamic phase to Mars is the same type of energy. So a lot of relationships that would be sustaining for this individual, I would expect to have a Pisces quality to it. So it's either somebody that they've had other relationships with in other lifetimes, or if I did the synastry chart between this individual and another person, I would expect the other person to have a lot of Neptune Pisces signatures in their charts, wrapping up type energy, balsamic type energy. That would be the expectation here. If I looked at this and it was somebody's natal chart foundationally, where is Mars? So Mars is in the sign of Virgo. So foundationally, this soul, Mars in Virgo, is going to be driven by the mind. It's going to instinctively head towards relationships, anything really. Mars energy is outwardly expressed energy. So certainly we're talking about relationships here. So certainly they're going to engage in relationships that's going to have a Mercury type component to it, an analytical mind type component to it, a energy of refinement, focusing on the imperfections could be part of this, right? I talked about the Virgo archetype in one of the examples I gave. I think about Venus. Was it Venus in Virgo, where I talked about this being self-critical and attracting people that are critical of you, being the mirror. So Mars in Virgo, I'm going to want to engage with people in a mental discussion. I'm going to want to express myself in a Virgo type way. It's going to be instinctual for me to do that. Where's Venus? So what's the inner vibration and what energy am I going to be calling to me? This individual would have a Venus in Leo in retrograde. So all of the retrograde stuff that I talked about in the beginning would apply here. So Venus in Leo, Leo is the archetype of, it's ruled by the sun. So it's a creative archetype. It's one that is going to attract people that can show them their creativity, where they can shine, their Leo energy, fun, play, adventure, outside of the box, artwork. I always think of cool hairdo cool hairdos with Leo for some reason, right? But it's the Venus retrograde archetype, which is going to be more self-oriented. So maybe like just initially looking at just these placements in their signs, there's going to be a strong mental component to it, a purification component to it, and then there's going to be a creativity to it. But there's going to be an inward focus, the Taurus side of Venus. There's going to be something within them that they're going to want to express through this lifetime in a creative way. And it's going to be refined, brought out, expressed within relationships. The next layer to this would be, what house is it in? Well, it's in the 11th house, so it's in the Aquarius house. Both of these signs are in the Aquarius house. So 11th house is humanity. It is Aquarius. It's thinking outside the box. It's groups and associations. And so all of those themes are going to be important for this person in relationships. And oftentimes astrology is quite literal. Probably a lot of their relationships are going to be initiated through groups and associations. They're going to meet people. They're going to associate with people. They're going to maybe form romantic relationships with people that are within groups and associations. That's going to be a big part of their relationship expression in this lifetime. And there's going to be an underlying energy through this lifetime of contributing to humanity, contributing to society, bringing things forward in a unique way, and can literally mean that in relationships, the Aquarius archetype is also going to be present, which means there's going to be uniqueness to their relationships. Maybe it's the people that they attract to them hold some type of unique gift, skill, or ability, or they just think outside the box. They're not really, they don't conform to mainstream society thinking in some way, can be part of this energy. So that's another layer that would get added onto this. I'm not going to cover the aspects in depth, but certainly if you are aware of that, you can go to that level and you can, in my solar fire program here, I can filter this so that I can say, show me all the aspects to Venus. And now I have all the aspects to the Venus symbolism. So now I can interpret all of these aspects, what aspects they're making to other planets, which will color the experience of this Venus symbolism. And then I can do the same thing for Mars. Give me all of the aspects to Mars. So there's less here. So there's the trine to Jupiter in the 7th house of relationships. There's an opposition here to Saturn. So just initially, I said I wasn't going to get into this, but just initially, Mars, maybe there's going to be a need through relationships to break free from any limiting structures or any authority figures that are limiting their self-expression in some way can be part of this. And supporting this is expanding their own Taurus side, right? The Taurus side of Venus, and Jupiter is expansion, 7th house is relationship. So through their life experience, they're going to be able to expand their own awareness of themselves and be able to identify their own values, their own needs, and how to support themselves. The next layering effect, aside from the aspects, is going back to Mars, 1st house, and Aries. That's the next layer. 1st house, where's Aries? Where is it on the cusp of? Here. So we got 1, 2, 3. And if you really wanted to get in depth, you can start going through aspects. But this will give you good information. So 2 is here. So adding to the Mars in Virgo in the 11th house, there's the Libra archetype, which is this individual's ascendant. Libra is the external representation of Venus, its relationships. So this individual adds the Libra archetype to the Virgo. So Virgo is like, now, how can I find harmony and balance in relationships? And the South Node is in Libra, so they're really comfortable there. South Node, that's where you're familiar with that energy, or that energy was modeled for you in childhood in some way. So they're familiar with that Libra energy. They innately project that energy because it's their first house. And then the third component on the cusp of their seventh house is Aries. Their North Node's in Aries. Eris is in Aries. Chiron is in Aries. So without going in depth in terms of Eris and Chiron, just looking at this, we have Virgo, Libra, and Aries. So just looking at the second and the third layering of this, Aries and Libra, how do I, through the experience of relationships, define for myself what I need, the actions that I need to take, Aries, in relationship to other people, Libra? How do I find the right orientation, the right harmony and balance in relationships to other people? Well, Aries is going to be really important because it's my North Node is there in Aries. It's in the seventh house of relationships. So through relationships, it's going to be really important for me to find harmony and balance within. Because remember, the relationship piece is a mirror. Once I find harmony and balance within myself, that will get reflected externally. I will find harmony and balance within relationships with other people, which is going to help me express that Leo energy that's deep within me, that I value within myself. I'm going to be able to bring that out in its fullest expression through this energetic expression of Libra and Aries. So that's the Mars energy. Mars, Virgo, Libra, Aries. Now go to Venus. Step 1, Venus in Leo. Step 2, seventh house, cusp of the seventh house. So we're right back here again. And then the third component is, where is Libra? Wow, we're right back again. We're back to Aries and Libra. So now it's almost like sitting at the blackjack table and doubling down, right? Aries and Libra is really important for them from a relationship standpoint, as is the foundational archetypes of Virgo and Leo. I have a strong analytical mind. There's a creativity to my expression. In relationships, I'm really going to get reflected back to me any areas where I am imbalanced, so that I can take the actions that I need, Aries, that feel right for me, that are also honoring of other people. So there's no projections. I'm not accepting projections. I'm not becoming enmeshed in relationships where I'm projecting needs, or people are projecting needs onto me, where we feel like we need to rely on each other or my world will fall apart. I'm, through this lifetime, going to define my own needs, my own values, and be able to express that authentically to others, which will create harmony and balance. Aside from the Libra archetype and the seventh house, Venus has the internal representation, which is Taurus. So you would look at, so you'd go 1, Venus in Leo, then the internal representation, the second house, Taurus, and then what house is Taurus located in? So for this individual here, you have 2 and 3. So what are my needs? How do I value myself? What are the things that I do value? So it would be one, Venus in Leo. Number two, the second house. And so there's no planets in the second house, but Scorpio is on the cusp of the second house. So going deep, Scorpio energy is going to be important. And then three, where is Taurus located? Taurus is on the cusp of the eighth house. And we have Uranus in the eighth house. So you have the Taurus and the Scorpio axis. Taurus is my own needs in relationship to others. And Scorpio is the psychologist, deeply merged energies with other people, deeply committed resources, energy, sexual energy is part of that as well. So how do I value, or what do I value? Well, I can look at this and say this person certainly values merged relationships, but they also need their own independence, and they need to be able to express themselves uniquely within the confines of those merged relationships. Scorpio energy. So they have a paradox going on because they have Taurus here in the Scorpio eighth house, and they have Scorpio on the cusp of the Taurus second house. So there's really, they're looking to find their own value within relationships. That would be the underlying energy of that expression. That's really important to them, the Taurus side of Venus. And then how that gets represented is by the indicators of Venus in Leo, the Libra archetype, Libra on the ascendant, and then the seventh house, Aries in the seventh house with the symbols there. So that's how you can peel back the layers of this in your own chart and look at this from that perspective. I would like to get into the aspects. I feel it's a little too deep. Here, you're going to get a lot of good information. If the aspects are your thing, then you're already like, Keith, I got it. I can see the aspects. Or if you want to go to that level, you can, let's just say this, you could put it in the comments below, and maybe I will create another video that will layer on top of this where I can pull in the aspects to get a much broader picture and start really adding layers, or let's say peeling back layers of the onion to go to that depth. But you will really get a lot of information just doing what I'm doing. This 1, 2, 3 approach. The signs that it's in, the house that it's in, where the first house, the seventh house, Libra, Aries, that will give you a lot of information. So let me just drop the screen here. So like I said in the beginning, I'm going to have links in the bottom. If you're curious about your placements, you can click on those links. I have blog posts which will describe in more detail. I mean, they're not really super detailed. It's a couple paragraphs for each placement, but it'll give you a better understanding of how you want to express your sexual energy, how you want to engage in relationships, what you're trying to show yourself in relationships. It will be a really good add-on to this. So as always, thank you so much for being here. I appreciate your time and your energy. I will have a link to my website below if you wanted to check that out. It has links to my social media accounts where you can follow me on other platforms if that's your thing. If not, that's cool too. Is there anything else? I don't think so. So I appreciate your time. Thanks for being here, and I will catch you again on another video. Thanks.